Welcome back to week 3 of the Pantry Challenge. Let me show you what I'm cooking. It is Monday, January 13th, and tonight's dinner is homemade Chick-fil-A. This is always a big hit in my house because, of course, we like real Chick-fil-A. So Chick-fil-A at home is a big hit too. I'll show you the chicken I make, the potatoes, homemade Chick-fil-A sauce, and some corn on the side too.
First things first are the potatoes. These take the longest in the oven, so I want to get these started. Sometimes I will cut the potatoes into a rectangle or fry shape, and sometimes I do them into cubes. Today is a cube kind of day. I actually prefer this shape because I think they get crispier with more surface area being cooked. I like them better. Plus, with my toddler's little hands, they like to be able to pick these up and pop them in their mouths too. I often have a couple bags of russet potatoes in my basement because they're inexpensive, they're filling, and they're delicious. I have never met a potato that I didn't like. It does take a little extra effort to cut the potatoes and prepare them yourself, but it does save you a lot of money and health in the long run. Instead of buying frozen fries from the store, just grab yourself a bag of potatoes and learn a couple of these simple techniques. Something I like to do is after I cut all my potatoes, I will let them soak in cold water before I bake them. This removes some of the starch from the potato and gives you a nicer texture in the baked potato. So, this allows the inside to be soft and fluffy while the outside is nice and crispy. This also allows me to work ahead. I can cut my potatoes at any time during the day and then store them on the countertop until I'm ready to bake them. While the potatoes soak in cold water, I'm going to get the chicken ready. I'm using some Good Ranchers chicken that I keep in my freezer, and it is still mostly frozen. I meant to get this out earlier in the day or the day before to thaw, and it just slipped my mind. So I'm just opening each package and putting each mostly frozen chicken breast in my 9 by 13 dish. I'm just going to cook this whole bag of chicken because it never hurts to have extra chicken in the house. The last component of our dinner that needs to go in the oven is this corn. It is also frozen. So I'm cutting the bag open and I will just slide this frozen hunk of corn in a cast iron skillet and it will thaw and warm up in the oven while everything else cooks. I had this cast iron pan in my oven preheating, and I also added my fat to the pan. So I'm using bacon grease to cook these potatoes because I think animal fats really get the best crispy potato. But of course, bacon fat is solid at room temperature or in the fridge. So I put the pan and I put the bacon fat in the oven to melt, and I'm going to add a little bit more on top. My pan is too full to stir these potatoes, so I'm just going to add a little extra fat on top, and that should get everything nice and crispy. I'm going to season everything with pepper, lots and lots of good salt, and a little bit of smoked paprika, and then they are ready to go into the oven. Everything is in the oven at the same temperature, and I will just periodically check everything to see when they are ready. I'm going to get started on the homemade Chick-fil-A sauce, and the first ingredient is mayonnaise. This Chick-fil-A sauce turned out better than it usually does for me, and I realized it's because I actually measured the ingredients. So I think I'm pretty good at eyeballing things sometimes, but it was really a good reminder that I should definitely measure. I am also doubling the recipe, so I'll put the link in the description for the recipe that I'm using, but just note I am doubling it for my family. I'm going to add a little bit of barbecue sauce. That's my home canned smoky barbecue sauce. Some honey, whatever kind of honey you like. Some yellow mustard. I like that this sauce combines normal ingredients that you probably already have in your pantry, and it's so much better than going out and buying specific Chick-fil-A sauce for however many dollars that is. I assure you it's much more than this. The recipe comes together in minutes and it has just a couple simple ingredients, but it does make your meal more fun. Make sure you give it a taste test, make sure it tastes good, and pop it in the fridge before your meal. This was our Chick-fil-A spread, and everyone enjoyed it thoroughly. The extra chicken will get turned into chicken salad or something the next day, and I'm pretty sure we ate all of those potatoes because they were crispy and delicious.
Today is January 14th, and I did feed my family today, but I have no footage to show for it. I felt like my kids needed some more attention today. They needed more of mom and less of the camera. And today's food wasn't terribly interesting. So that's why I don't have anything to film today. But I will give you the rundown of what the day looked like. So for breakfast, I made baked oatmeal. I actually prepped it last night and then just baked it this morning. And I have a video on my channel of how I make baked oatmeal. It's a big hit with the kids. And oats are easy that I have in bulk in my house. And so I can feed that to them. We're a little bit tired of eggs, so I'm trying to switch it up a little bit. But we had baked oatmeal for breakfast. I'll link the video below if you want to see. And then while the kids were eating breakfast, I got a text message from one of my best friends that her husband was in the hospital. And so I was racking my brain trying to figure out how I could help her in the midst of my day because we had some other errands too. And so I decided to make a batch of Instant Pot Hamburger Helper, which again I have on the channel. I'll link it below. It's a crowd pleaser. Everyone I've ever made it for really likes it. And my friend has three toddlers just like me. And so I knew this would be a hit with her kids and it would just make her life a lot easier. So I figured out how to make that while my kids were eating breakfast and I shoved some food in my face because I really wanted to be able to help my friend. She said she had things covered, but when your husband's in the hospital, some help is really appreciated. And I wasn't going to ask her, can I bring you food? Because then she might say no. Instead, I said, I will be at your house in this amount of time with this food for you. And it wasn't complicated. It was Instant Pot Hamburger Helper, but it really made her day better. And me reaching out to do that for her showed her that she was supported and loved. So I want to encourage you, if there's someone like this in your life, food is always a great option and don't overcomplicate it. Just reaching out and telling someone that you care about them enough that you thought about them and made them and delivered it. That's really all they want. So if that happens in your life, fear not and always have the ingredients for Instant Pot Hamburger Helper in your house like I do. Lunch today, we were at a family member's house, so she very graciously fed us lunch, which kind of felt like cheating at the Pantry Challenge, but we see family members on a regular basis throughout the month, and so we were grateful for that provision today. Dinner was just leftovers. We had so much food in the fridge. We had more of that Instant Pot Hamburger Helper that didn't fit in my friend's dish. We had leftover burgers. We had leftover pizza. We had leftover rice and mac and cheese and a whole bunch of stuff. So that's what we ate for dinner, which was nice because again, I could play with the kids a little bit more, focus on them. They needed some wrestle time, so I was throwing them on the couch and making them giggle. Oh, and my youngest has a cold now, so he wanted to be held the whole time. So you moms will understand. I'm holding the 1-year-old and pushing the 5 and 3-year-old into the couches, and they're just giggling up a storm. You know, you sit on them, pretend, and tickle them, and all that good stuff. They loved it, and so I could completely focus on them and again avoid this camera stuff until now. So that's what I have for today. There's the rundown in case you're interested. And now I will move on to tomorrow's footage of whatever I'm making tomorrow, which we'll find out tomorrow. You'll find out in a couple seconds. It's Wednesday, January 15th, and I'm about to get dinner started. Tonight we're having creamy sausage rigatoni, which is like a one pot on the stove meal. Super simple, but really delicious. It's a red sauce mixed with cream cheese and noodles and sausage. Like, I don't know how you go wrong. On the side, we'll have some green beans. And also, if the kids are going to stay as occupied as they are right now, I'm going to try to make a freshly milled coffee cake. So I'm going to church tonight for a book study, so my husband will have the kids. So I thought it'd be nice if they had a little snack tonight, something to pass the time a little bit while I'm gone because they have lots of energy and I thought my husband would appreciate it. So I'll show you how I make all those things and quickly before I have to go to church.
I'm starting with my coffee cake, and like any recipe in my house that starts with flour, it starts with my grain mill. I'm going to mill soft white wheat for this recipe. This is the freshly milled coffee cake from Bread Becker's. If you're not familiar with Bread Becker's, it's run by Sue Becker, and she is like the leading force in all things freshly milled grains at home. She is so knowledgeable and she has taught everyone so much about freshly milled grains. I highly recommend you check her out. She also has amazing recipes because she's been doing this for a long time. I'm going to add my other dry ingredients right to this bowl because everything comes together in one bowl. She's also a mom of 7 kids, I want to say, so she knows how to bake efficiently. As with all of my recipes, I will put a link in the description to where you can find this recipe and make it for yourselves, because spoiler alert, it's really good. I gave the dry ingredients a quick toss and now I'm going to add the wet ingredients right on top. Like I said, this whole thing comes together in one bowl. So there's a cup of milk, 1 egg, Again, these are super basic things you probably already have in your house. I'm going to give those a quick whisk to break up that egg yolk and start getting the flour absorbing that liquid in the bowl. However, you don't want to overmix it because this is a cake, and if you develop any gluten, you will get a rubbery, chewy cake. And I don't know anyone who likes that. I'm adding some olive oil here as the fat of choice for the cake. I think Sue Becker in her original video did a flavored olive oil for this part, and so she was talking about all the different combinations you can do with flavored olive oil and adding extra depth to your cake that way. I'm just sticking with plain old extra virgin olive oil. The last ingredient to go in this cake batter is some honey. I like that this recipe doesn't have a lot of sugar in it. The only sugar is in the brown sugar topping, which I'll show you in a bit. Otherwise, it's just this honey in the batter, and it tastes plenty sweet. It does taste like a sweet treat. You'd think there was more sugar in it, but there's not, and it's really a wonderful balance of flavors and sweetness without being overpowering. Here I'm mixing up the streusel topping. It's just butter and brown sugar, cinnamon, and nutmeg. I actually even reduced the amount of brown sugar in the topping and it works out just fine. So if you want to play around with the amount of sugar that is in the topping, feel free to go ahead and do that. But I think this is a good balance of flavor and sweetness without, taking away from the fact that it is a cake, but not being too much. I'm going to combine these ingredients into a brown sugar buttery paste. You can see how smooth it gets here. And now I'm ready to assemble the cake and get it ready for the oven. I am greasing my pan with some butter because I really don't want to lose any of this delicious cake to the pan. And then I'm going to add my cake batter straight in there. If you notice that your cake batter has gotten any thicker in consistency, it's probably because the flour is starting to soak up that liquid, depending on how long it took you to make the streusel topping. And then you just plop this on top. If I had more time, I would have made this prettier or more well distributed or something. You can use your hands and sprinkle it over the top. I just plopped it because I had to keep going. And this is your reminder that not all of your food has to look picturesque. It doesn't have to look Instagram worthy or whatever. We are all just home cooks, and I happen to be putting mine on the internet for everyone to scrutinize. So don't worry about it. It'll taste great. I spread it around a little bit with that knife. It worked out just fine, don't worry. I popped that in the oven, and now I'm switching gears to dinner. The recipe is called creamy sausage rigatoni. Well, I don't have any rigatoni, but I do have penne. But it's in this bulk bag. So I have to measure out 1 pound of bulk penne, and I'm going to put that in a pot of boiling water to start cooking. Sometimes when I make this meal, I'll make the noodles and then strain them and then cook the meat in that same pot so I don't have to dirty another dish. But I did not have time for that tonight. I am on the clock. So the pasta is cooking in the big blue pot and the sausage is starting to cook in the cast iron skillet. And when everything's cooked and everything, then I will combine them. But I am trying to get a move on this evening, which makes filming and juggling children lots of fun, let me tell you. The meat in the cast iron skillet is just ground pork. It's not sausage, and the recipe does call for sausage. So I remembered in the Prairie Homestead Cookbook by Jill Winger, she has a recipe for Italian sausage using the plain pork. So she gives you the list of spices that you need to make it into a sausage seasoning. So I added parsley, garlic powder, onion powder, basil, oregano, black pepper, salt, and she also calls for fennel seeds, red pepper flakes, and red wine vinegar, but I did not add those because I was in a rush and don't have some of those things. It worked out just fine. So again, use whatever you have. Adding that extra flavor, adding the extra seasonings did make a difference, and I recommend it if you only have plain pork. My 1-year-old is under the weather and currently teething, so he really does not want to be put down. So I assure you, I cook one-handed all the time and always keep him far away from the stove, and we've never had a problem with it. My pasta and meat are done cooking, so you can see the meat there just waiting to be added to the larger pot. I strained the pasta in the colander in the sink, so that's just sitting waiting to be added to the sauce. This is homemade pasta sauce from the summer that I froze, and it's still slightly frozen when I'm adding it here to the pot because that big container takes a long time to thaw. Anyway, in this warm pot, it'll mix up just fine. I also want to note that I was supposed to measure the pasta sauce that I put in there, but I did not, and it worked out great. So maybe this is your encouragement to not take your kitchen so seriously, to just eyeball things, and most of the time it works out just fine. I added a block of cream cheese to my red sauce, and I'm going to warm both of those so I can combine them and make them smooth for the sauce of our pasta and sausage. I'm going to add my sausage to that pot too and give it a stir, coat that really well before I get the pasta in there. I also need to get the sausage out of this pan because I'm going to add green beans into this pan. Again, I do not want to make any extra dishes if at all possible, so I'm going to warm up some green beans, some home canned green beans in there to have on the side with our dinner. If you watched our pantry tour, you know that our family does not love home canned green beans, but I have so many of them. So, my favorite way to try to use them is to put them on the side of a meal that has lots of yummy sauce. So, at least we can all coat them in the yummy red sauce with cream cheese mixture, and it makes them taste a lot better that way. I have seasoned them with a couple of things, but my family just doesn't like them. So we just got to get through these green beans, and for future reference, I will be freezing them. The red sauce and cream cheese are now fully combined, and I'm ready to add the pasta. At this point, you just have to mix the pasta into the sauce, and then dinner is served. While this is a simple dish, it does pack a lot of flavor. I like the flavor of my homemade pasta sauce, of course, because I customize it to the flavors that my family likes. I like using sausage instead of something like ground beef because I think that adds more flavor too, but the block of cream cheese mellows everything out and just makes it really smooth. So you'll have to try this recipe at home in your family and let me know if your family likes it as much as mine. Most of this pot will disappear in one sitting. This is what our plates look like, and I'm ready to eat before I have to run out the door to church. But not before I take this beautiful coffee cake out of the oven. It turned out so well and was really good. I did have just a minute to taste it a bit before I left, and I definitely had some more when I got home. Here's what the texture looks like on the inside. It is so soft and fluffy, you'd never believe it was whole grain. It is Thursday, January 16th, and I don't even have time to talk on camera because I have to get cooking and leave again tonight. My sweet husband will be watching the kids again so I can go to a different church class tonight and learn something else. One of the perks of a large church is that there are lots of classes and workshops available, and so I'm heading out again tonight. But I have to get dinner made first. I put some white rice and some turkey broth in my rice cooker to get going while I make some grape jelly meatballs. My kids call them my favorite meatballs, and so whenever I say, "What's for dinner tonight?" they'll say, "My favorite meatballs?" And today I got to say yes. Frozen meatballs are one of my favorite convenience foods, and I'm very sad that as I filmed this clip, I used the last of my frozen meatballs. You'll see I added the chili sauce to the pot and then I put a little bit of water in there and shook it to one, get all the chili sauce out of the container, and two, this recipe does need a little bit of water in the bottom of the pot. And so, two birds, one stone, I got all of that in there. I also added that jar of jelly and now I'm just going to mix it up a little bit. It all combines when it cooks and pop that in my Instant Pot. You don't have to thaw the meatballs at all, which is one of the reasons this is the fastest dinner I could think to make. And so you stick those in there. Make sure you turn your vent knob to sealing if you have that kind. And you need to pressure cook it on high pressure for 7 minutes. Some days I enjoy the art of cooking and using my skills, and some days I just want the appliances to cook my food for me. Today is one of those days, and I'm glad I have the option of both. Quick release the meatballs as soon as they're done cooking. I do that with a towel over top to contain the steam, and make sure you grab the handle with the towel because it will be hot after releasing that steam away from your face. These are what the meatballs look like right after they're cooked, and this is what the rice looks like coming out of the rice cooker. Perfectly fluffy every time. I was able to use some more of those green beans left over from last night, and this meal got gobbled up.
It's Friday, January 17th, and I will not be showing you dinner tonight because I don't have to make dinner tonight. As much as I love cooking, it is nice to take a break, and my mom invited us for dinner tonight, so I won't be making the meal, but I will be making some dessert, and I'm going to show you what I'm making. They're called Use What You Got oatmeal bars. I think that's what they're called. This is from Kate at Venison for Dinner. I'll link her blog down below. It's a really simple recipe and you really can use what you have. So I have some things that need used up. I have some basic ingredients on hand, so I'm going to make some dessert for our dinner tonight at my parents' house.
The recipe starts by melting 4 sticks of butter. Yes, 4. But don't worry, this makes a huge sheet pan of dessert in order to require 4 whole sticks of butter. Thankfully, I'm well stocked with butter for the pantry challenge, but if you're not, maybe this isn't the best way to use a whole 4 sticks. Anyway, I need some flour for this recipe. You can use all purpose, you can use freshly milled. Again, use what you got. So I am milling some soft white wheat as the flour component for this dessert. One of the first things I did when I got my mill was decide how many cups of wheat berries would equal 1 cup of flour. For me, half a cup plus 1 tablespoon of wheat berries equals 1 cup of finished flour. So that's how I did all those measurements there and decided how much to put in the top of my mill. While my flour is coming out of my mock mill, I'm going to add the rest of the dry ingredients to this large bowl. Everything should come together in this bowl, making my life much easier. Added rolled oats, brown sugar, baking powder, I think that was. And now I'm going to combine all of those ingredients. You can see my brown sugar was in huge hunks, so I used my fingers to break all of those up to make sure it baked correctly. A lot of people are afraid to use their hands in the kitchen, or maybe they're just afraid on camera. But I say, as long as they're clean, you've washed them thoroughly, let them be your tool. Let them work for you. They work really well in the kitchen and everywhere else. This is what my flour mixture looks like when I'm happy with all the clumps of brown sugar I've broken up, and now it is time to add the butter. This is going to be the crust of our dessert, and I'm mixing it very carefully as to not spill anything, but the flour will soak this butter up pretty quickly until we get, I don't know, what consistency is this? A paste? It's a dough? No, it's not a dough. A batter? I don't know what you call this, but this is what it's supposed to look like when all the butter is mixed in. According to the instructions, I need to remove 1.5 cups of this crust stuff and set it off to the side because that's going to be the topping for our dessert later. So again, this is pretty simple. You just make this one crust and you just have to sandwich some jam in between it. This is a half sheet pan which measures 13 inches by 18 inches, and the recipe calls for it lined with parchment paper. I decided to just use one of my silicone insert thingies, and now you just have to press the crust down until it covers the entire surface. So honestly, at first when I rolled it out, I didn't think it was going to work, but you just keep pressing and it will eventually fill the whole bottom of the pan. Again, use your fingers, get into those corners, and spread it out as best you can. You have a couple options when it comes to the filling for this dessert, so I'm going to use part strawberry jam and part applesauce. The first time I made these, they were really sweet, and I didn't want to repeat that. So this strawberry jam is homemade and low sugar, but still plenty sweet. The applesauce, on the other hand, is completely unsweetened, so combining the two fruit flavors and the sweet versus unsweet, it worked out well. You can see I have about 2 cups of strawberry jam in there, so I'm just going to add 2 more cups of applesauce. You need anywhere between 4 and 5 cups of jam slash fruit for the filling of this dessert. I'm going to mix them until they're well combined to help distribute the flavor, but also to make the texture similar across the whole dessert. Go ahead and dump all of that onto your bottom crust and spread it out as evenly as you can. The jam mixture is evenly distributed across my bottom crust, and now it's time to add the remaining 1.5 cups to the top. Spread these out, distribute them as best you can. It really doesn't matter that much when it bakes together. It all works out just fine. Pop those in the oven and be prepared for your house to smell really, really good. This is what they look like when they come out of the oven. They need to cool completely before cutting them. This was the spread at my mom's house. She made pork tenderloin, roasted broccoli, and smashed potatoes. Everything turned out really well, and everyone was very gracious to allow me to film our dinner before they dug in. This is what the oatmeal jam bars look like when they're cooled and cut into. You can see the layers. They were really good, and I will most definitely be making these again. Thanks for watching, everybody.